playing with my microphones, man. I'm telling you this. Thank you. Riven Van Hosen. Thank you so much. They are playing with the sound. Okay. We'll edit this. We'll edit it. So anyway, as I said, I played with words here to do this title, Blood Rain. I wanted to talk to you all to help you to understand the trick, the title, Blood Rain. I didn't spell it R-A-I-N. I spelled it R-E-I-G-N, as when somebody rules their reign, okay? So we're looking at the blood that is shed by the entire planet within America and around the globe, okay? For America and Great Britain's rule. They have reigned, but it has been a blood reign to maintain their quality of life, to maintain their position and their power, to maintain their influence. It's been at the expense of the blood of their own and the blood of everybody else around the world. And we can see this. As a matter of fact, I was trying to upload some videos, but it kept freezing prior to the show. I wanted to play a few things for you all, but we're going to get into this and we're going to really chop it up. What we're finding now is that the rule of America, that blood reign, is coming to an abrupt end. No doubt about it. It is coming to an abrupt end. Now, I want to go into something real quick. It was something that was left over from the last show. I wanted to show you just what's going on. The Daily Hodl, I believe that's what it's called. The Daily Hodl. That's THEDAILYHODL. The Daily Hodl, I believe that's what it's called. It's news and insight for the digital economy. And the headline of this, which was published May 27th, 2023, it says $30 billion exits U.S. banking system in 1 week as deposit flight grows. Now, you say, well, 30 billion is not nothing. It's not really anything when compared to a $30 trillion economy. It is a lot. It is a lot, especially when things are starting to spiral in such a way that it cannot be controlled by the Fed, the U.S. government, and the financial elite. What is this? It's a symbolic token. It's showing us that other system, and it's also showing us that people are starting to lose faith in the American dollar and the American economy. And if this is so, this is telltale. One side is actually taking place economically with America, domestically and globally. Now, I don't know. I think we're having a little connection problems due to the, or somebody's interfering with the computers. Put it like this. I'm doing all of this, but I want to go to something real quick. You know it's bad. Here's a headline. You know it's bad for the reign of America, that blood reign. You know it's bad for the reign of the Western world because, again, let me say this for you all. When I say America, I'm not saying America independently of the UK. Or when I say the UK, I'm not mentioning the UK independently of America unless I specifically say that. Because these two are one and the same, economically, politically, and geopolitically. These are the two daughters of Babylon, Britain and America. Now, this article, again, let's go to something. You know it's getting bad. When Cuba says this, a nation that's been under sanctions from the United States for decades upon decades upon decades, right? And this is the article that was published May 31st, right? And it says, time to ditch the dollar, Cuban president, okay? Now, this, you say, well, Cuba, what is Cuba? Cuba is a bridge point to Latin America, to the Caribbean, right? Let's read part of this, and I'm reading this for the first time with you all because I just got on this. Okay, the article starts like this: with U.S. dominance broken, the BRICS nations can build a fairer world, Miguel Diaz-Canel told RT. Now, that is the president of Cuba, right? So he's giving an interview and he's acknowledging that American dominance is broken. Hence, you see the wars, you see the provocations, you see the escalation in Ukraine, you see the escalation around Iran, you see the escalation in Syria, you see the escalation on the Korean Peninsula, you see the escalation between China and Japan, you see the escalation in Central Asia. This is what empires do. Right? This is what empires do. When they become desperate, they do desperate things. They are no different from desperate people. My studio on YouTube is acting up. For those of you who are looking, my studio on YouTube keeps buffering. It says I have excellent connection, and yet it keeps buffering and freezing. Astral Atmosphere in the chat says what is this? Sorry, notice. He didn't get a notice, or his notice didn't ring. So this is what we're going through, but we're not going to get sidetracked and we're not going to get off subject. I want you to pay attention to this, okay? In the article, it says, giving up the U.S. dollar will free developing nations from Washington's sanctions, blackmail, aggression, and slander. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel told RT in an exclusive interview due to air on Thursday. So this interview was taken a day and it will be airing tomorrow. Okay? What is going on here? YouTube is tripping. I've lost, for those of you who are in the chat, I've lost my chat, my YouTube dashboard. Hopefully it'll come back up. I don't understand what's going on. But anyway, I'm going to still talk to you. So listen to what he says again. Giving up the U.S. dollar will free developing countries from Washington's sanctions, blackmail, aggression, and slander. Now, what's the significance about this? Is it him mentioning that Washington sanctions, blackmails, is aggressive and loves to slander people? What's more primed in that statement is when he says giving up the U.S. dollar will free developing nations or countries. Now, how is this coming about? America is alienating everybody, be they enemy or be they allies alike. Again, I keep telling you that this is what the U.S. and the U.K. continue to do. They continue to play these crackhead politics. Okay, and Reven Van Holsen, shout out to Reven Van Holsen, a channel member. I see it in the chat. So thank you. My dashboard is back up on YouTube, and but it's lagging behind. It's like lagging behind like 5 or 10 seconds. So I want to apologize for you right here, right now. I have no control over this. I can show you where it says excellent connection on my part. So if I have an excellent connection and it's doing this and my programs are upgraded, it's not on my end, okay? So charge it to my head and not to my heart, because I've done everything that I can to bring to you a good show without all of these trivial things happening. But again, let's go back to this subject, okay? Giving up the U.S. dollar, not pushing it to the side, not temporarily suspending its use, but giving up on it. That means I'm fed up with it. I'm done with it. Reven, thank you so much. I see you in the chat. And let me highlight you real quick, because you are a channel member. Let me highlight you real quick. It's only fair. Give me a second. All right. I got to highlight you. All right. Boom. Channel member. And so, and by the way, this week, some new Hedo drop for the channel members. Okay. Some new Hedo drop. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really, 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 really appreciate it. Okay. Now, again, I want you to think about this. This is a barometer of to judge the current economic situation and financial situation of America, of the empire, and to an extent to the Western world. Because remember, the United States is the largest pillar of power, the largest pillar of influence, the strongest weight-bearing pillar of the Western world. And when we see fissures in this pillar which upholds Western supremacy, it does not bode well for the entirety of the rules-based international order, okay? So when a nation like Cuba, that has been under sanctions for decades upon decades, come out openly and says that we're going to give up on the dollar, we're tired of this, we now have an alternative to this, then you start saying, well, what led Cuba to this position? American intransigence, refusing to give up on illegal sanctions, wanting to bring Cuba to its knees because Cuba is an ally of Russia and an ally of China. See, they believed that if they could have turned the economic screws and continued to, they could have called a massive uproar of the people of Cuba and used that as a springboard for a color revolution to install a U.S. Styled democracy in Cuba so that they can kick the Russians out, and then they don't have to worry about Russia ever having the ability to exert power and influence over America by reestablishing a naval facility or a military base in Cuba, which lies some 90 to 100 miles off the coast of Florida. You understand? So, because remember, if we go back to the 60s, the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was because Russia had installed weapons that could strike the heart of the United States on Cuban territory, but it was in response to America deploying her, Persian missiles to Turkey, right? So America always wanted to get the jump on Russia, but Russia had an ace card, an ace up its sleeve, because it could go back to Cuba and use that to exert pressure on America's southern borders. You understand? But America, being full of arrogance and intransigence, look what she does. Instead of her welcoming Cuba to have free relations with any nation it wants to, it doubled down, quadrupled down, and pushed more pressure, more sanctions on that nation, which caused it to firmly tilt and turn into the corner of Russia. And now they're saying, look, we have a viable alternative to the US dollar now. So now we're going to give up on the dollar. Remember that Belt and Road Initiative? Remember that the Global South, and how the Global South is aligning with Russia and China, and how they're bringing about a brand new international order. Shout out to Cece. How they're bringing about a international order, and Cece says she didn't get notifications either. That's how they do me. That's how they do me. So I've been dealing with all of this while I'm doing the show live on the air. It says the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency enables the U.S. to pursue an aggressive hegemonistic policy of building walls, imposing punitive sanctions, blackmail, aggression, and slander, Diaz-Canel said. Against this policy, which has seen Cuba embargoed, listen to this. You tell me that America is not vindictive. Listen to this. Which has seen Cuba embargoed for 6 decades by the U.S. Diaz-Canel added that BRICS provides a brilliant alternative for economic integration, especially for developing economies. So all of this is a result of American intransigence, American hubris, American arrogance, and exceptionalism. Remember what I told you all. America believes that she is, and Britain believes that she is, and the Western world believes that they are the exception to the rules, right? On the one hand, they trumpet God. I'm a God-fearing nation. I'm a God-fearing person. I'm a God-fearing leader. And on the same breath, they ignore all of the divine laws that God set out. They don't respect sovereignty. They don't respect sanctity of life, sanctity of marriage. They don't respect any of the basic principles which build family, which builds community, which builds nations. But they believe because they have been in power so long that they are the exception to the rule. That's what you call somebody that's inebriated on the power, the influence, the wealth that they used to have. Right? So listen, when we look at this and we see Cuba switching or pivoting itself to the Belt and Roll Initiative, the Eurasian Economic Union, the BRICS banks, the BRICS Plus Union, the Latin American grouping to put forth an alternative currency for the Latin American and Caribbean nations. All of this is a byproduct of colonialism, racism, arrogance, and Western fascism. Regardless of how arrogant America, Britain, and the West are, they still can't nullify the very laws of nature, the very laws of science. Every action will receive a greater or equal reaction, right? So, knowing this, we know that they have not received an equal or greater reaction in the past. So, what we're looking at right now is that equal or greater reaction in motion. That's why nations are pivoting away from the dollar. Nations are pivoting away from the West. Nations are pursuing their own national agenda, their own national goals. And they're doing it even under the heavy pressure of the United States, Great Britain, and the Western world. This shows you that a new paradigm is underway. We're embarking on something altogether new. And this is not what the West wants to hear, but this is the reality of the time, and they're going to have to just deal with it. Suck it up. Listen to what he says. Let's go further. He says, since it was first coined in 2001, BRICS has grown from an acronym for 5 emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, into an informal alliance that has overtaken, listen to this part. This is the main point that you should hear. Since it was first coined in 2001, BRICS has grown from an acronym for 5 emerging economies, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, into an informal alliance that has overtaken the US-led G7 bloc in its share of global GDP, has its own development bank, and counts Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Argentina among 19 prospective members. Whoa, that's big, that's major. So let's go here for a second. Let's see what is really meant right here. Give me 1 second. Let me pull this up. Give me 1 second. Oh, right here. Here we go, right here. I'm going to see you 1 second. Okay, we are right here. Okay. All right. Here we are. So, what? All right, right here. Meaning. We have it right here. So, according to the dictionary, the word overtake, overtaken is taken from the word overtake. Overtaken is the past participle. Okay? It is a verb. And it means catch up and pass while traveling in the same direction. All right? So we saw the global south, or the BRICS nations, catch up and pass America's led G7. This is groundbreaking. This is a tectonic shift because they now account for more GDP than the Western world. Listen, if they account for more GDP than the Western world, and in this bunch, you have the world's largest manufacturer, the largest infrastructure investor, the largest investor, right? The largest importer, the largest exporter, and you have 3 to 5 of the top carbohydrate producers in the block or aspiring to join the block. What does that show you? That shows you that a tectonic shift is underway from dollar, pound, and euro hegemony to something more fairer and more just outside of the levels of power and influence of the Western world. This is what is kicking these provocations. This is why America and Britain and the European Union continues to provoke and continue to live in la-la land, because the reality of the situation doesn't gel with them. The reality of the situation shows that they will no longer rule. And when you have ruled for so long, it's hard to acknowledge a new ruler coming up. You can see it in sports when a person has been a champion so long and they see this up and coming buck coming, and he can fight, or he can dribble the ball, or he can pass the ball, or he can do, because it's taking their shine and their position. They try to blunt the effects of that new up and comer, because eventually they know that he'll be gunning for the top spot. And if I'm sitting in the top spot, that means that he's gunning for me. And I'm not the person that I was 20 years ago. I'm not the person that I was. To give you an example, I've been in martial arts my whole life. My whole life. My pops, as a matter of fact, the boys in the house, we didn't have a choice. We had to learn martial arts. It was either, my dad gave us a choice, either learn that or fight him. And so that fight him, that was a no-go. All right. So when I was 20 years old and 30 years old, and even when I was in my 40s, right, early 40s, I had, I had something to prove with these young bucks, whether it was stand up, whether it was on the ground, or whether it was throwing or whatever, But when I would leave and go home, I would feel it like I have never felt it before in all the joints. And sometimes I would have to soak all day long. And it wasn't like that in the 20s. You understand? So I realized that I no longer had the endurance that I had. I no longer had the vitality that I had. I no longer had the advantage in strength. I no longer had those advantages that I enjoy, even though, you learn how to think as you get older, so that you can overcome the disadvantages. But with America and the West, they're seeing this up and coming buck that they thought they had under control. And now this buck is vying for the #1 spot. And America is not the nation that she used to be. Britain is not the power that she once was. The European Union no longer can dominate the politics of global affairs or economic affairs or militarily. And this is something new on the horizon that they're not used to. You understand? So what they're trying to do is see if they can make Russia blink. See if they can make China blink. See if they can coerce and cower Iran. See if they can cause a break in the lower tier nations when I say lower tier, I'm not talking about they're lesser than China or Russia. I'm saying that they have less influence on the global stage in these nations, okay? So they're trying to go for the weakest link so that they can cause a chain reaction to break the entire thing, okay? Because they are not liking what they see. A new reality, a new world, a new financial order, a new political order, and a new military order that is not led or dominated by Britain, the United States, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Greece, or any of the European nations. This is something that they cannot grasp because it has been within the realm of their power for the last few hundred years. Cece says, my muscles inflamed after walking 6 miles. Cece, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. So listen, they cannot process that it is another alternative out there because they have monopolized and have controlled every organization, every level of power internationally. And now it is really getting at them that there's an alternative out there and we can't do much about it. But maybe if we make war with the weaker ones, if we overthrow the weaker ones, if we start color revolutions with the weaker nations, we can cause a chain reaction to stall out and maybe eventually stop the transition from the rules-based order to a fairer world order. Maybe we can slow down, maybe temporarily halt, or maybe completely overthrow that. This is what their mind is thinking. Because they have too much to lose. They don't want a fair playing field. They want it where they can control everything. They can manipulate prices. They can manipulate interest rates. They can manipulate commodity prices. They want it. Why do you think the New York Stock Exchange is tied directly to the London Stock Exchange? Why do you think that the New York Gold Exchange is tied directly to the London Gold Exchange? They're one and the same. This is how they continue to manipulate prices. This is how they continue to manipulate commodity prices. This is how they continue to shuffle in and out world leaders around the world by the manipulation of interest rates and commodity prices. This is a level or instrument of power that is used by the West to control and subdue anyone out of that circle of the G7. That's what's going on. So they're seeing a reality that is not favorable to America, and they cannot deal with that. They cannot deal with that. And if it's not favorable to America, guess what? It's not favorable to Britain, which means it's not favorable to the EU. And that's why we see the constant provocations. Most people don't tie in the economics to the politics, or the politics to the geopolitics. But on this show, we tie it all in so that you can get a clear picture. We don't want a half-drawn picture. We want to connect all the dots so you can see the picture in its entirety, so that you can get a clear view of what's going on and how it's all transpiring, okay? So let's go back to this article again. Remember, we're reading this for the first time together. So if something's in there that surprises you, it surprises me also. It says, excuse me. It says, amid calls for a common BRICS currency to settle their trade bills, members of the group have begun to conduct more bilateral trade in their own currencies, eschewing the U.S. dollar. They are now, it's something that's in motion, right? That can't be stopped. And I don't think that the West really grasp the depths of what is going on. They see it, they believe that they can offset it, but in reality they don't really get what is really taking place. Listen, when the dollar falls, and it's going to fall, I don't care about the rosy promises that some prognosticators, investors, and pundits are talking about. There is no way that you can be the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world and that works out good for you. And I'll give you an example because, of course, I'm the king of analogies, all right? Now, say, for instance, you've been spending above your means for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And the spending has become so outrageous that you're getting credit cards to pay other credit cards. And then you're getting loans to pay bills or to pay on loans so that other bills won't be cut off. So what are you doing? Essentially, you are in a hole and you continue to dig. No ladder to get out. You just think that if you continue to dig, one day you'll reach China. But in reality, you're digging a hole that the world is seeing that will bury you eventually. So I don't care about the rosy promises. I don't care about none of that. We deal with reality-based stuff here. Reality-based stuff. So if you are continually taking in debt, you're not producing anything. You're not working towards anything. You have become a service-based economy, meaning hotels and restaurants and all of this stuff. You're not a massive producer like you used to be. And so And also at the same time, you're living on the well wishes and the gratuity of everybody in your neighborhood. Let us use common sense, okay? Eventually, that style of living will catch up with you. And when the bills come due and you go to apply for another credit card to pay on all those other credit cards, you'll get a rejection notice. And when you get that rejection notice, sometimes people get overwhelmed and commit suicide, or they kill their family, because they find themselves in such an economic situation that it is unreal to them. They can't take the pressure. And then sometimes people just give up, period, and just say, you know what, I lost everything, and go live out on the street. Well, think about this. When it comes to America, the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world, America has accumulated more debt than every nation combined, multiplied times over. Okay? Now, if that is the case, even if the entire world came to her aid financially, it still would not be enough to help her out of the debt cycle. So now, look what I'm saying to you. So she has been overcome with debt. She understands that too. And the only way for her to maintain it is to keep this charade going with extending the debt ceiling and to push the debt down the road and to borrow in infinity and all of this stuff. But the only way for that to be viable is for me to uproot any peer or near peer rival. So if I get them out the way, I can force the lesser nations militarily to do as I say. So the wars that you see are wars of aggression and wars of desperation to maintain the house of cards. But there's a strong wind gathering, a wind called the Global South, the Eurasian Economic Union, the rise of Africa, the rise of Latin America, the rise of the Middle East, the rise of Asia, the BRICS, the Belt and Road Initiative. These winds are hurricane force winds blowing against a tiki hut. The tiki hut being the United States economy. How do you think the tiki hut will stand up against hurricane level 5 winds? It won't. It won't. But desperation. Listen to me good. This goes back to what I was telling you. Desperation. When a person gets desperate, they don't think clearly. That's why you see a person that is in financial distress. They've been living this false life in suburbia America, right? And when they get so out there and they don't see no way out, you'll see them come home, kill themselves and their family, right? So America's in that desperation. So now she's saying, if I can't rule, I'm killing everybody. If I can't rule, I'm killing everybody. And how do we know that? Russia is the largest nuclear power on the planet. Dwarfs her stored nuclear capability, dwarfs that of the United States. In fact, the United States power plants gets a portion of Russia's nuclear fuel so that it can produce power for the United States. 25 to 30% of America's nuclear fuel comes from leftover from Russia. Okay? Now, common sense tells us to not provoke the largest nuclear power on the planet. Common sense tells you that. But what happens when you become desperate? What happens when all of your plans and all of your designs fail and fall through? If I can suppress Russia, see, they thought that breaking up the Soviet Union, or now the world is ours now. We can fashion and mold it in the way we want to, and we will never have to pay the debt that we have. And then the rise of China, the rise of Iran, the rise of Russia, the reemergence of Russia, and the ascendance of nations like Venezuela, the outspoken Cubans, all of this stuff. Africa. As a matter of fact, Lavrov was talking about, he says, Africa lies at the key of a new order. This is what Lavrov was talking about. He said, with the rise of Africa, we can fully put forward a new order outside of American dominance. And I'm paraphrasing. He said, but Africa is the key to this. This is why you see Boko Haram and all of these other terrorist organizations flocking there now. This is why America is front loading bases in North Africa. This is why the Britain is front loading illegal bases. France front loading illegal bases. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Italy. All of these nations are occupying North Africa because they understand that this is the key to the global South, and America becoming desperate. And remember what I told you? When you talk about America, you don't talk about her outside of the connection with the UK or Britain. They're one and the same. And then by extension, you see the UK, the EU. They need Africa as the memory gland to try to maintain their rule or their position or to maintain themselves as a viable alternative power. You understand? So this is what that scramble for Africa is about. And Africa is not going for it. Oh man, I tell you what, come on. Let me finish reading this and then we're going to go into some clips and stuff. I want to stop right here in the midst of our show and say this. Thank you for each and every one of you for joining, for those who may participate by leaving a comment, for those of you who hit the like button or the unlike button. It doesn't matter, just hit the button, okay? So that we can continue to do these shows. I would like you all to hit the like button right now. And if you don't like the program, hit the unlike button. I don't care. Just some type of participation, okay? All of you in the chat, thank you so much. All of the channel members, thank you so much. Really appreciate the chat that we have with each other and how we can discuss these things and we can be agreeable to disagree. Nobody's gonna curse you out on this platform, you know. So we are adults and we handle ourselves in such a way as adults. All right. Now, I want to go to something. Let me finish this article real quick. It says, I believe that we need to recognize the leading role of Russia in shaping this multipolar world, Diaz-Canel said, stating that continued de-dollarization will lead to more inclusive and more mutually beneficial trade for those who reject the U.S. lies and empty promises. The world is getting fed up with this. You understand? They're getting fed up with America demanding that people do this, and then this is what they'll do. I'm gonna tell you, man, this system, it has to stop. So these nations like Latin America, they're talking about doing a lithium cartel. America's not with that. So guess what she did? They were talking about this. It was announced this year, but they were talking about that last year, year before last, and year before that. And they were, and Bolivia was going to be in the midst of that as the core of that. That's why they overthrew Evo Morales of Bolivia, but he came back, and his successor in his party won the elections. But it was a big brouhaha, and he had to leave his country because America instituted a coup in Bolivia. Let us not forget about what's going on in Peru. See, matter of fact, instead of me telling you, let's go back to a video I played, and you can see the arrogance in this stuff. I got to play this video I played about 3 or 4 shows ago because it's on the line of what we're talking about right now. Just listen to this real quick.
Latin America wants to create a lithium cartel that's guaranteed to drive the US crazy. Lithium is one of the most important resources in the world and the central component in batteries, which virtually all electronics, including the rising electric vehicle industry, rely on. While lithium is needed in every corner of the world, the majority of the world's lithium is in just 3 countries: Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. These 3 countries, commonly known as the Lithium Triangle, announced that they want to band together to set the price of lithium, an arrangement commonly known as a cartel. This arrangement would have massive geopolitical implications, which would shift the global balance of powers further to the global south. Here's what you need to know. Bolivia's President Luis Arce recently gave a speech where he called for Latin American lithium producers to band together and form a collective lithium policy. He said, quote, "We must be united in the market in a sovereign manner with prices that benefit our economies." The price of lithium has grown exponentially with the kickoff of the EV revolution. The lithium car battery market for electric vehicles is expected to grow 10 times larger over the next decade. Arce also made it abundantly clear why he felt this cartel was needed. He said, quote, "We don't want our lithium to be in the Southern Command's crosshairs, nor do we want it to be a reason for destabilizing democratically elected governments or foreign harassment." It's no secret that EV manufacturers like Tesla and Ford need Latin America's lithium, and they need it cheap. In 2019, the US openly sponsored a right-wing coup against Bolivia's then socialist president, Evo Morales. While the US used the usual excuse that they were supporting the coup for the sake of democracy, it's widely believed that one of the central reasons the US was so eager to oust Evo Morales was because of his mining policies. As president, Evo Morales nationalized the mining industry and said that any company that wanted to extract Bolivian lithium had to mine alongside Bolivian mining companies as an equal partner. The coup government under Janine Áñez wanted to privatize lithium, but wasn't in power long enough to do so. However, Elon Musk basically admitted that the coup in Bolivia was a coup for lithium in a tweet where someone accused Elon Musk of being involved in the planning of the coup for Tesla's interest in Bolivia's lithium. Instead of denying the accusation, Musk simply responded by saying, "We will coup whoever we want." Elon Musk owns the biggest electric vehicle company in the world and would profit massively from a neoliberal government in Bolivia that's willing to export Bolivia's lithium for cheap. But the most damning evidence of all is the US military Southern Command admitting its intimate involvement in securing lithium in Latin America.
I had a Zoom call with the US ambassadors from Argentina and Chile, and then also the strategy officer from Levant, and then also the VP for global operations from Albemarle for lithium, to talk about the lithium triangle in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, and the companies, how they're doing and what they see in terms of challenges and things like that in the lithium business, and then the aggressiveness or the influence and coercion from the PRC. And so the ability to get those groups together to leverage, what's really happening on the ground and how can we help, and who else can we bring to the table to help us figure this problem out and box out our adversaries, box out our competitors by teaming together with each other and others.
Well, you might be asking yourself why a 4-star US Army general is calling up lithium companies in Latin America. Consider the fact that the Biden administration issued executive orders designating lithium supply lines a matter of national security for the United States. Of course, when they say national security, they're not saying that securing lithium supply lines is going to cure cancer or heart disease, which kill hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. They're talking about the security of corporate profits and the fact that China is quickly becoming one of the biggest EV manufacturers in the world. The 3 countries of the lithium triangle, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina, control about 65% of the world's lithium. Mexico, Peru, and Brazil, who have also expressed interest in joining a joint lithium bloc, would bump that up to 70%. Combined, these countries would basically be able to set the price of lithium by controlling the rate of extraction, similar to the way OPEC controls the price of oil. This would of course be devastating to companies like Tesla, who want lithium as cheaply as possible. When Evo Morales was in power, his government nationalized the hydrocarbon industry and used the revenue to cut poverty in half and increase social spending by 80%. When it comes to lithium, Latin America faces a similar choice. Latin America's lithium wealth can be extracted for the benefit of a few transnational corporations or for the benefit of the people of Latin America. Hey everyone, thank you all for watching on your lithium.
What we have here is a understanding. As I told you all, because I hear this on some of the main channels, right? And how they talk about, when they talk about Elon Musk, they talk about him in a good light. And oh, Elon, he really roast this person, he really did this. And they really believe that Elon Musk is 100% independent. And anyone with common sense knows that you can't become that rich without making deals and selling yourself, especially in the Western world, to the powers that be. And so did you hear what the guy said? He said, Elon, he did a quote from Elon Musk. He said, and Elon Musk said, we'll coup who we want. See, it's all about the dollar. It's all about maintaining American dominance. It's all about maintaining Western corporate dominance over the world. And Elon says, we will coup who we want to. He's not even a government official. What the hell is he talking about? This shows you his connection to the government and the elite. because these corporations give policy to the government gives the direction to the military, and the military enacts the policies of those corporations. This is why we call this place not a democracy, but it's fascist, when corporate interests and government interests mesh together. Okay? So don't start talking about democracy when we hear for a fact that this is fascism. The government carries out plans that benefit the corporations. That's why most people in America, they're saying, like, why is America implementing this is not good for us. It doesn't look good for us. They don't care about that. They care about what's good for the corporations. And so Musk admitting we will coup who we want. We is not one person. We is more than one. Meaning his connection with the governments that do the color revolution. We will coup who we want. Right? Now let's look at what the dictionary says about coup. Okay? The dictionary says coup is a noun. That's C-O-U-P. Coup. Or we say coup, and the C is the P is silent, but you know, it is what it is. It says a sudden, violent, and unlawful seizure of power from a government. Now, let me say that one last time to you all. A sudden, violent, and unlawful seizure of power from a government. And Mr. Elon Musk boldly said, we will coup who we want. So this shows you that America and the corporations of the West are not after democracy, even though they say that they want to go around the world and give out democracy. When they openly say that they're fascists, we will coup who we want. Why would you do that? You're going to do it in the best interest of your corporations. What's going to make the most money and give you access to. And if that means going over in there and overthrowing a government that is beneficial to the people of that nation, then the hell with the people and that nation. We want the commodities there. That is not democracy. That is fascism. Okay? But again, what do the average people like me know? You know, we only have common sense. But again, now, I want you to listen to this too. This is a short 1 minute clip, 1 minute and 10 seconds, I believe. Check this out.
Well, it's a huge deal because it represents a massive shift, a geopolitical shift underway in the Middle East or Southwest Asia, which until this point in time has been entirely dominated by British geopolitics and then American military. The Saudis had been an outpost of the British and then the US oil companies. They were key to the whole petrodollar system. And the US was committed to regime change in Syria, still is, to getting rid of the Assad government, to the extent that, as Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, admitted, the US was supporting the terrorists in Syria against President Assad. So the idea that the US can continue to dictate policy to sovereign nations is now being overturned, and part of this is based on the Iran-Saudi rapprochement, the role of the Chinese in the region, but also the fact that the global South is now standing up to the US and British bullies. And this is the major point of change, and hopefully this is just a first step toward cooperation that goes beyond just not fighting, but actually goes to the point of reconstruction.
So we see a shift going on. These little once docile nations that didn't feel that they haven't had an alternative to the US dominated financial system, the British dominated financial system, right? Because the London Stock Exchange and the London Gold Exchange are the largest in the world, right? And we know that the US Gold and Stock Exchange are tied to the London Gold and Stock Exchange, okay? So this marriage between these two allows them to manipulate prices, commodity prices, oil prices, everything, right? And it gives them an unjust advantage over the entire world. And now we see that smaller nations who once didn't have an alternative now see that they have an alternative, and they see that the empire is in a weakened state even after its blood reign. They see that the U.S. empire is in crisis mode. So now they're standing up and they're screaming and they're lifting their voice saying, hey, we're going to go eastward, or we're going to be a part of the global south, or we're going to have a Latin American currency, or we're going to have an African currency, or we're going to have a Middle Eastern currency, or we're going to have a West Asian currency. Matter of fact, Iran just had a grouping of nations in Tehran a few days ago, and there was a meeting of Asian nations. I wonder if I have that clip here. Hold on one second. Hopefully I have that clip here. Let's see. If this is not the right clip, I'll stop it and I'll come back. I just want you to see something real quick.
Once again, the governors of the central banks of Iran, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal.
I'm going to play it. That's it. Just a few days ago, Iran just held a grouping of West Asian nations, and they are putting together their own payment system outside of the dollar, right? And they'll be able to trade with each other because they're going to exchange information via each other's national banks and stuff, which weakens the dollar. But listen, what set this in motion? The seizure of Russia's assets, the economic war Donald Trump started with China, the kicking Russia out of the SWIFT system. Remember, every action will receive an equal or greater reaction. And I continue to tell you, regardless of how inebriated the Western world is, reality will hit them smack dab in the face, and they'll start to realize that you are not an exceptional nation when it comes to the rules of science, when it comes to the very base of how God laid the base of the universe. As thou hast done, so shall it be done unto thee. What goes around comes around. Judgment, karma, right? All of these can be wrapped up into every action will receive an equal or greater reaction, okay? So now we see nations rushing out of the dollar. Listen to this good.
Once again, the governors of the central banks of Iran, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar have come together, this time at the Central Bank of Iran, for the 51st annual two-day summit of the Asian Clearing Union. On top of the agenda, de-dollarization.
The dollar has become a tool for the U.S. as a dominant country. The U.S. has weaponized the dollar by imposing sanctions against independent countries. Today, de-dollarization is not a choice, but an inevitable response to the policy that allows the dollar to be used as a weapon. And I am glad that we are moving forward with our agenda to become less dependent on the dollar.
The members are set to discuss various issues, including determining the new currency basket of the member countries in order to settle exchanges without the need for euro or the dollar. Also exploring the feasibility of using digital currencies of central banks for cross-border payments, and the unveiling of the interbank messaging network of the member states of the Union are some of the major issues set to be discussed in this year's summit. But most importantly, the amendment of the Union statute in order to facilitate the acceptance of new members will be decided.
Three countries, Russia, Belarus, and Afghanistan, as well as the Islamic Development Bank, are present in the 51st summit as observers. The three countries I mentioned have applied to become full members of the ACU. Obviously, with more members, the ACU will be able to follow its agenda more effectively.
Process is already in place as decided by the last meeting of the board of directors. We have extended invitations to certain other regional member countries, and a couple of them have shown interest, which will be evaluated by the board of directors, and if it is approved by all board members, then they will become members.
Creating a non-SWIFT platform for connecting the bank systems of member states and clearing trade under the framework of the ACU is an important development that is more attainable than ever, considering the recent political developments and the rise of new and diverse global powers capable of wielding influence in both global markets and global governance.
The Asian Clearing Union was established in 1974. It was an initiative of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission of Asia and the Pacific, and the main objective was to provide the groundwork for eligible monetary transaction among regional countries. Today, 50 years on, the ACU is closer than ever to that goal, with de-dollarization high on the agenda. Gisumi Shah Ahmadi, Press TV, Tehran.
Listen, how ironic is this? In America's, Great Britain, and Europe's rule, and their bloodletting during their rule, which means that they had a reign of bloodshed, blood rain, right? How ironic is it that now the very life's blood of the American empire and the Western world is being shed right now by nations moving away from dollar domination, by nations openly, no longer behind closed doors. And remember that this was an initiative, even though Russia gets the credit for this, and even though China gets a lot of credit for this, this actually was an initiative of Robert Mugabe, the former leader of Zimbabwe, the Honorable Robert Mugabe. This was one of his initiatives. But he didn't have the military or the economic wherewithal to push it forward, even though he tried to. And Muammar Gaddafi, being a part of that meeting that took place, wanted to take Mugabe's thoughts to the next level. So they got together and they were going to form a United States of Africa. And they were going to bag it was going to be a currency, an African currency, the African dollar. And it was going to be bagged by the vast resources of the continent of Africa. And France, Great Britain, the United States, and Italy, the former Libyan colonizer, could not allow for that to take place, because overnight there would have been a shift in wealth and power. And that means that when the West was years before was able to get commodities and resources on pennies on the dollar, then this would have been flipped, and they would have had to pay exorbitant prices, because the dollar, the pound, the euro would not have been worth as much, because the dinar, or the gold, a dollar of Africa, would have been the prime currency. This was unacceptable by Europe. This was unacceptable by the United States. This was unacceptable by the UK. And so they went into Libya. They demonized Muammar Gaddafi. They vilified him. Then they bombed him. And then they sodomized a head of state. Listen, I will not allow that to be forgotten. Not only did they go and depose the legitimate leader of a sovereign nation under false pretenses, they sodomized him and then killed him. And that came courtesy of Western democracy. You understand? But this gets covered up. And no one talks about this because it's unpalatable for most people. But the only way that you can come to a real solution to the problems, you got to address the issues. You can't address the issues that you want to address and ignore the ones that you don't want to address. For you can't get to the cure of something. If scientists studied diseases and they discarded the stuff in the disease that they didn't want to deal with, you would never get a cure. You got to address the good and the bad. Then this is something that not only the Western media does not like to do, alternative media does not like to do. You understand? But it's crazy, isn't it? Because this shows us just how much crisis, or how much the U.S. is in a state of crisis. And if the United States is in a state of crisis, and it is the so-called the richest, the most influential, and the most military powerful nation of the Western world, if she stands in crisis, right? And the West uses American military might to enforce colonialism and expansionism, right? If this nation is in crisis like this, you don't think the people in Berlin, the people in Paris, the people in Brussels, or the people in London are in crisis mode when they see that the strongest military power of their collective order is starting to crash and burn? You don't believe that? Man, come on here. Let's read a little bit more of this. God, dog, an hour has gone by already. Seems like we just started. My God. But let's go a little further. And it says, I believe that we need to recognize the leading role of Russia in shaping this multipolar world, Diaz-Canel says, stating that continued de-dollarization will lead to more inclusive and more mutually beneficial trade for those who reject the U.S. lies and empty promises. Now, here we are. De-dollarization. That means getting out of being dollarized, right? De-dollarization. You are getting out of the massive outflow of dollars, how trade is done in dollars, which means that you are now freeing yourself from a system that is based on debt expansion. As I told you on my show, I've interviewed a colleague of mine, Gregory Mannarino. He's one of the economic gurus. You can go to his channel, traderschoice.net. Gregory Mannarino, I've interviewed him. You can go on my channel and see at least 2 or 3 interviews I've done with him over the past months to years, okay? And he told me that this system is a debt-based system, right? It is predatory. I've said that long before he told me that the system is predatory. And it is like a disease or like a parasite. It must continue to latch on a host body and suck the life's blood out of the host to maintain itself. And when that host no longer has enough life to sustain the parasite moves to the next host. And this debt system must go on in perpetuity in order for this system of governance to be maintained. But eventually it'll come to a head. So he says, for this system, they got to continue to make debt, print debt. They got to continue to push debt out, which means that somebody has to be in debt. If the system needs debt, that means that the system needs to put people in debt so that those at the top can suck the economic life out of those in the middle and at the bottom and anybody in between those cracks. Parasitic. Matter of fact, let's see something real quick. Give me a second. Give me a second here. Let's go to the dictionary. All right. The word parasitic is an adjective, and it means of an organism living as a parasite, resulting from infestation by a parasite. Okay. What is this? Okay. So a parasite is something that derives its life from something else or someone else. Can we say that the Western world is like this? Can we say it? Of course we can. Latin America, the West expanded into Latin America and sucked the independence, the life, and the resources out of Latin America. You still have holdovers from the West over there. You have the Malvinas Islands, which the British call the Falkland Islands, that lies right off the coast of Argentina. It is in Argentina territory that the British continues to control and refuses to return it back to Argentina. You have British, U.S., French, German. You have all of these main colonial countries that still have islands that belong to Africa and Asian nations, and they call it British territories or French overseas territories or something like that. That's parasitic. You have leached on these nations, and you're still sucking the life out of them. As a matter of fact, Spain, I believe it was. Spain. I could be wrong about, but it's Spain has called a meeting of NATO. And let me see if I can pull this up, because I like to talk to you about these things. I like to show you, and I'm gonna see if I can pull this up, because I don't want somebody to say, "Oh, you're making this stuff up." I believe it is. Give me 1 second. See if I can pull this up. Because you gotta hear this. Please let me be able to pull this up. Spain. Let's see. Let me use one more keyword, because this is something that's crazy right here. This will make you scratch your head. All right. 1, 2, 3. Right. Let's see. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'm trying to pull this up. Spain, NATO, Spain, NATO. Let's see. See if that'll come up. There is a let me see if I can pull it up on this other channel right here. Give me 1 second. And the reason this is very important, because it has to do with being parasites, and it has to do with occupation, and it has to do with colonialism, even in this day and time. Okay. And I know the camera's looking here, but I'm looking at the camera here right now. Let's see. Let me go here. Spain, Africa. See if we can pull it up this way. And it's a whole bunch of articles come down, so I have to read the title. Let's see if that's the title. So you guys give me a second. All right. Let's see. Extreme Netherlands, Spain. They might have scrubbed the Google with this. Let's see. Anyway, let me see if I'm gonna pull up 20 more articles, and if it's not in this, then I'll just tell you guys. And then I'll find it on, and then bring it on another show. Anyway, France has called a meeting of NATO nations, right? And look at this. And they said that their territorial integrity is at stake. This is the truth. I'm not making this stuff up. You can Google what I'm saying, or you can Yahoo it, Bing it, DuckDuckGo it, or whatever you want. And they have this overseas African territory. It's in Africa. Listen to me good. The territory is in Africa. And France, not France, but Spain, I believe, has called a meeting of NATO states, and they are trying to issue Article 7 and Article 5 or whatever it is, where one nation is attacked, all nations are attacked. Because the people there are trying to get independence from Spain. This is the truth. There was an article about this about 4 or 5 days ago. And no alternative media has covered that. So they want to invoke a self-defense article, because the original people of the territory which they occupy want independence. And so they say that this is a threat to Spanish territorial integrity. You can't make this stuff up. The lunacy of this. You cannot make this stuff up. And I've yet to hear one alternative media organization or platform or outlet speak on that. They are trying to invoke Article 7, I believe, and Article 5 or Article 4 of self-defense, and try to bring in all of NATO to suppress the uprising in Africa of an illegal colonial outpost of Spain. I believe it's Spain. And nobody sees anything wrong with it. Wow. Now I want you to understand something. This is going on at the very same time that America, Great Britain, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Greece, and all of these European and Western nations are screaming to the top of their lungs about the territorial integrity of Ukraine. and the sovereignty of Ukraine. You make that make sense. Man, I'm telling you, the hypocrisy of the Western nations. And this has been a blood rain for America and the Western world. See, I'm so passionate about this because most people don't cover this stuff. And if they do, they just skim over it. They don't give you an insight to what's going on here. And a lot of them know this. They just refuse to talk about it because in their minds, Ukraine is in Europe. So, and we've heard the press, we've heard government officials say, well, these people look like us. Europe, there cannot be a war in Europe. Why? You waging war in Africa? What the hell you mean it can't be a war in Europe when you waging wars in Africa? What the hell you mean it can't be a war on the continent of Europe when you're provoking war in Latin America? What the hell do you mean it can't be a war in Europe when you're provoking a war in the South China Sea with China? Or you on the Korean Peninsula provoking North Korea? What is so special about where it cannot be a war there, but you're all right with having them over in everybody else's territory? See, that's that exceptional mind. Everybody else is lesser than us. Their lives means little to us. Their sovereignty and territorial integrity does not mean as much to us unless it becomes more beneficial to us. If it's not immediately beneficial to us, then we brush it to the side. And that's why nations are reaching for something better, something more fair, something more just. They're looking at the global south. They're looking at China. They're looking at Russia. They're reaching out to some people that can rebuff and give them a breather from this madness that is the Western Empire. As a matter of fact, let me let you hear what an Irish politician in the European Council had to say about some of this stuff.
A member of the European Union, an Irish politician, Claire Daly, calls out the hypocrisy of the European Union to their face when it comes to Africa. Let me show you this clip. We'll come back.
The Western media shows two warlords, two rival military factions, ordinary people frightened and fleeing, but nothing explained, no context, no responsibility. The European elites throw up their hands and wonder, how shall we swoop in and save the Africans from themselves? But there's no mention of European funding, external border policies, the financing of state forces to round up desperate people migrating north to stop them reaching Europe. We've removed our fingerprints from this disaster and we pretend it comes from nowhere. I agree that we need peace, but how? As usual, this isn't about what we must do, but what we've got to stop doing. Sudan needs civilian government. Sudan needs economic justice. It needs an end to militarised extractivism in rural communities driven by the circuits of Western capital. That's the cause of the decades of instability and suffering in Sudan. If we stop paying the warlords wages, maybe then the people of Sudan would have a chance at civilian government.
This is not her first time calling out her own people. She does it here and there, and they don't like her. Like, it is so clear that the other European Parliament members do not care for her, but she still exposes their hypocrisy, double standards, and evil ways.
State sponsor of terrorism is a term of US law. It doesn't exist in EU law. But a Zelensky advisor called for it in the Parliament magazine, and here we are again reporting for duty. And all it will do is make peace harder to achieve. Exactly, of course, what the extremists want. No peace, no off-ramps, all bridges burning, and Ukraine a permanent abattoir in a suicidal holy crusade against Russia. So, if you want to start naming state sponsors of terrorism, let's do it. European sponsorship of Israeli terrorism in Palestine, Western sponsorship of Saudi terror in Yemen, ISIS, the product of French, American, British, Turkish and Gulf sponsorship in Syria and Iraq. Decades of right-wing US-backed terrorism against the Cuban Revolution, the Contras in Nicaragua, death squads in Guatemala, in El Salvador. Remember Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, horror after horror, terror after terror. There's nothing constructive about the pot calling the kettle black. Would you ever cop on, start championing peace and end the war, which is patently in the interests of EU, Ukrainian and Russian citizens?
The bottom line is, she is correct. The European Union act like they are deaf and they are blind when it comes to African countries and the conflict that we face. They act like they have nothing to do with it. They act like they don't support an agenda. They don't support a rebel group. They don't support a coup. They act like there's nothing to see there and there are saviors. They hold a meeting and say, we need to fix this. We need to help African countries, which they know they have contributed to that war, to that conflict. And it is good to see their own holding them accountable. And we shall see if they're going to respond to her claims and comments. I'm pretty sure they're going to act like they haven't heard it and move on. But we will not let them get away with this. They might have been able to get away with it up until this point, but the youth is waking up. The youth is saying no more.
But you don't hear that on the alternative medias, right? The so-called avenue for censored news, for suppressed news. You don't hear these things there. You hear them here though, and we bring them to you live and in color. Now, for all of those, we're not getting off there, but listen, hit the like button. I also want to say this: 55 or 60% of you who view the channel constantly are not members, and I would like to right now take the time out to ask you and invite you to become a subscriber to the show. We can agree to disagree. No disrespect amongst each other. We grow from each other. That's how you have productive societies. We can grow from each other. So I would like to ask you and invite you to become a subscriber and hit the bell icon for notifications if YouTube will notify you. And also, I would like to invite you to become channel members. My channel thing has been up for like 14 days. We've already had 9 videos drop. Okay, so you get your money's worth, and we go into stuff that sometimes we can't really go in live on there. And we're going to have just a member meetup so we can talk and converse amongst each other. So and that's in the works. But now I want to come back to the subject at hand. Do you not see that the whole system is now falling apart? Do you not see that people are questioning? Now check this out. People say, well, how can America be so vicious? Well, if you vilify and you demonize people who you think are a threat, it becomes easier to kill them. It becomes more rational to justify your killing of them, your occupation of them, your war. And I continue to tell you that America's foreign policy mirrors her domestic policy. The brutality that she shows to people in Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean and Asia and even in the Middle East and Europe is the brutality that she shows here amongst people of color. It is. And just to show you, I'm just going to go into this. It is just bear with me so we can see the viciousness and see what is breaking the American empire apart. Just listen to this.
Saturday, there was a domestic incident at a home, and Nikayla Murray was having an argument with an ex-boyfriend. She asked her 11-year-old son to call police. He called police. Darian called police and his grandma. They both showed up, but mom says that when police showed up, that they were aggressive. They were banging on the door and trying to kick the door in. She opened the door. She said guns were drawn. What happened then is that the officer yelled for everyone to come out with their hands up. Her boyfriend ran out, ex-boyfriend ran out through the back door and trying to get away. She came out, no problem. She let them know, look, there's kids inside. 911 caller said there was kids inside. Well, her 11-year-old son, Darian, comes around the corner with his hands up, and she says nothing in his hands, unarmed. An officer shot him in the chest. He was taken to a hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. He was receiving oxygen. She says, by the grace of God, he survived.
So when you are able to vilify a particular people or a particular nation or a particular leader, it becomes easier to then savage that person and justify your savagery of that person. The international policy, the domestic policy. We see it in real time. Also, we see that urban America is bubbling. And we see that there's a lot of shootings in suburbia and in America. Now, I want to give you an understanding of why this is taking place, okay? Because people tell you about the violence, but they don't tell you what leads up to the violence. They don't tell you all of the ins and outs of this stuff. They just want you to believe that this is just black and white. Okay, now, we're not going to go back 50 years or 60 years, okay? We're not going to go back to slavery and all that stuff. We're not going to do that. We're going to stay in a 40-year time span, okay? Let's see. Roughly a 40-year time span. Now, you know, on this platform, we showed you where Richard Nixon had a policy of vilifying Black America. It was an open stated policy, okay? And how they flooded, according to Richard Nixon, top advisor, they purposely vilified a section of society, the hippies and the Black people. They flooded the community with drugs. We know that for a fact. Then they flooded the community with guns. Then you rob them of a proper education, and you rob them of a viable alternative to their environment, or you rob them of an out from that environment. And check this out, then you inundate them constantly, because this is a part, he said, a part of getting in their head. You change the music on them, because remember, rap music in the 80s and stuff was not gangster music, right? But you change the music to violent music, oppressive music. You change it to dehumanization, to sexist music, right? Then all the movies that come out are gangster, violence, and sexist, right? Now you have people that are bubbling that. Remember, science says that environment shapes a person just as well as DNA. We can't let that go. We cannot forget that. Violence shapes a person just as much as DNA. I mean, when I say violence, I say environment, excuse me. Now, let us look at something. We've addressed this before, because we have to do this, because this stuff doesn't fall out the sky. Now, you have an inferior education. You're already in a system that when you're born 2 legs down, okay? Now, let us look at this. Are there any Black-owned gun manufacturers and distributors in America? No. Okay, if that is the case, we're going to do this like detectives do, okay? We're going to do it by process of elimination. Because if we do it this way, you get a deeper understanding, and then nobody can then put on you their perspective or their view, because we're dealing with facts, okay? Now, are there any gun manufacturers and gun distributors that are owned by Black people in America? No, absolutely no. All right. So if that is the case, then why are the guns falling in the urban community? How are they getting there? If there's no distribution of Black people, a Black distribution company, and no Black manufacturers, then how are the guns being manufactured and then shipped into the urban community? How? We have to look at this. Now, if it's constantly an influx of this, then this is not by accident. This is being done on purpose. Now, with opportunities robbed, and all you see all day long is vilification on the television, violence on the television, and in the music. You are what you eat mentally as well as physically. So if that's the portrayal they have of you, and you're looking at your surroundings, and your surroundings have become that what you see on TV and hearing the music, then the next thing, you'll have to act that out. Now, we've established that there's no gun manufacturers, Black gun manufacturers. There's no Black distributors. Now, drugs. There are no Black or any city, inner city, Latino or what have you. Border, who controls the borders. None control the satellites. None own the airports or airplanes. None own the boats or the submarines. So how, again, is there an influx of this stuff in urban America? And if it was once or twice, then okay, we can say that it's an accident. But if it's been going on for 40 and 50 years, that is on purpose. So now you had a policy, and Reagan followed that policy, that say no to drug policy. That was an extension of Nixon's policy, to publicly state this and privately do this to alienate that particular grouping. I'm not saying anything that is not on record. You can go get this stuff, okay? I know it's not palatable to most, but we have to get to a solution. And the only way to get to a solution is to address the problem and address it thoroughly. So now we have successive presidential administrations that publicly state we're against it, but privately promote and fund the very thing that they publicly state that they're against. Now, when the violence escalates, and the drugs spill over in suburbia, and the drug situation escalates, right? Is it the people who were deprived of the opportunity and the education, or is it the people who shipped the drugs there, who shipped the guns there, and then encapsulated those people into an environment like that? And it's almost like this. Let me give you an example. Do we fault the soup for the ingredients in the soup, or do we fault the chef for cooking up the soup? And once we look at it like that, we get a deeper understanding. And now we can look at the policies of America outside of our borders. The same thing. She cries about 9/11, right? And then she wants you to be blind to the fact that the very people that she claimed committed 9/11 were the ones she trained and armed and financed. So they're the villains when they attack you, but as long as you give them money, drugs, and guns to attack everybody else, they're rebels, they're heroes, they're mujahideen, they're what is it? I forget what she called them on Rambo. What is it? Freedom fighters. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda on Rambo was called freedom fighters. If you think I'm lying, go. I don't know which Rambo it is. I believe it's either the third one or the fourth one. I could be wrong. But in the closing credits, they give credit to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. They call them the Mujahideen. Those are the same people. And they call them freedom fighters. And they thank them in the credits. If you think I'm lying, go get the movies and look at the credits. You don't even have to watch the movies. Go to the end of any one of the Rambo. I forget which one it is. Go to the end and look at the credits. The very people that they say they're fighting now, they gave credit to in that movie. So how is it that on one hand, when you control them and you finance them and you arm them and you direct them, they're freedom fighters? But when it blows back on you, they become terrorists. Man, if you don't get out of here with that foolishness, come on, you cannot just push this on these people. This is the problem with America. She wants to abdicate her responsibility. You can't go around the world bombing and raping people and then not expect that to come back on you. Would you allow somebody to bomb a building anywhere around here and then don't bring them before justice? If you think that justice must be had, then it's got to be had when all of this takes place. It can't just be when it affects you. What about the masses of the people that it affects? I'm telling you, this is crazy. This is crazy. So let's go a little further. And this is the blowback. Listen to me good. I'm going to play you. This is 2 minutes. This is the blowback effect of her policies to flood the urban community with drugs and guns. This is the blowback effect.
One of those toddlers was brought here to Christ Medical Center last night following an accidental shooting. That victim, one of 48 people shot in various incidents over the weekend.
I don't call them an accident, I call them
48 plus people shot. What do you call? You are now safer in Iraq and in the war zone in Afghanistan than you are walking the streets of America. The blowback effect, unintended consequences of empire, blood rain. And this has put the U.S. empire in a state of crisis, perpetual crisis. They don't tell you the reason behind the situation. They only want you to focus on the situation because it affects them at that moment. You can never cure a problem like that. You got to address it. You got to, man, listen, we've got to stop acting like fools. We got to stop acting like we don't understand. We got to stop giving these people a pass. Because when they want something, they'll go work for it or they'll go and study enough for it. So if they don't understand at this moment, that's because they don't want to understand. All right? Let me highlight this, right? I got to highlight this real quick. Give me a second. All right. I got to highlight. Alexandria Black says that's rules-based order, double standards. This is what I'm talking about. You see it, I see it. So I know other people see it. They have to see it. They have to see it. Astro, I gotta put this up there. Astro's atmosphere says, I'm gonna become the first black gun distributor and manufacturer. Hey, and if you do that, then they might put all of the crisis problems that are coming on America on the back of you and say, you are the one supplying the guns, we gotta come after you. So now let me go back to randomi Zurge. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I know I'm butchering it. Randomly Zurg, I'm sorry. But it says, in my opinion, the fastest way Russia can help Africa and others is using their floating nuclear reactors to supply power for industrialization of coastal cities, Ras Aram vessels. I mean, I know what you're talking about. That is a good idea, what you just said, though. That's a real good idea. Russia has a lot of floating, they have the technology so they can build reactors, floating reactors, right? That would be a smart move. But the problem with that is this: you got to have constant security around that, because you know if it's going to benefit Africa, if it's going to benefit Russia, if it's going to benefit the global South, then the Western nations will not allow that to go unchecked. You understand? Because if that is the case and you're helping these nations to become independent and viable nations that have huge infrastructure projects going, huge self-investment projects going on. The West understands that when these things turn from blueprint to reality, it undermines their say and their power. They're not going to just let that go willy-nilly without sabotage, without demonization, and then provocation, and maybe even assassination or war. You know, that because they have everything to lose. This is what I'm trying to get into the minds of the people. The West is losing everything. This is why they continue to try to continue to say this over and over. The rules-based order, right? Because that's the order that they've benefited from. That's the order that has been maintained through the barrel of the gun, through the sanctions regime, and through the demonization process. You are this, you are that. Because I get on this show sometimes, listen, and some of these guys think that aggravates me. And they'll put a comment, you monkey, you this and you that. You know, they put stuff in the comments like that. And I laugh, you know, because I actually understand the underlining of the genetic process, what makes the monkey. You understand? And I understand that I'm nowhere near close to that. So you can't determine for me my self-value. You understand? So that little stuff, that's out the window what they try to do. Now, with the West, the West tries to determine not only your self-value, but your resources value. So it benefits them. Again, I go back to something that I often said on previous shows, not last year or whatever. The West made the greatest monetary scheme in the history of the world. In the history of the world. You say, what is it? Europe has little to no resources, right? And the country that in Europe that had the best fertilized land and minerally rich land and resources is in a power struggle between East and West. That's Ukraine, right? Now, what the West did, they went and colonized Asia, Africa, North Africa, which is West Asia or the Middle East, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And what they did, listen to me good, I got to take my hat off to them because this was so ingenious. They realized that they were lacking in supplies and resources. So what they did was come up with a monetary scheme to rip these people off. So they started to print up their own money. The paper, how much does it cost to make paper? Not really much. I put this ink on the paper and I put this face on this paper, and then I assign to it a denomination or a value to it. Then I go to you and tell you that you're resource rich. And I say, listen, I can come and invest in your resources or your natural, your minerals or whatever. And I can give you X amount of euros, pounds, or dollars for those minerals. Now look, they go and they spend pennies on a dollar to extract the resources. They take them back to America, Europe, and the UK and refine them. They may have spent £1 or $1.50 or $1.25 in euros. They go right back, they refine that mineral or that resource, and they sell it back to Africa at $20, $30, $50. Okay? Now, this is a perpetual cycle in Latin America and Africa and Asia. So you are always playing catch up, even though you lie at the center of the monetary scheme, because you are letting your resources go for pennies on the dollar. They're selling them back to you for dollars on the penny, and you're caught in a debt trap. So they come back and they offer you something. Hey, listen, we will take this money that we made and we'll invest in this, but you got to do this, 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 and this. And if a new government comes in and says, no, we're going to do this, then guess what the West does? They sanction that country, nullifying the value of the paper money that they gave to that country while keeping the resources that they took from the country. So you are out of it two ways. Your currency reserves are no longer valid because they have sanctioned you and nullified the value of what you're holding, while they are holding what you used to have in your ground. Isn't that something? That I'm telling you, that is a scheme unlike any scheme. You're talking about 3 cards, Molly, and all that. Nothing compares to the dollar, pound, euro, Western world monetary scheme, where they extract your resources for what they claim on their paper is a denominal value of their currency. Then they destroy that value while maintaining trade with other nations with the resources that you gave them. So now you don't have money to fund your infrastructure projects. You don't have money to pay for the bills. You don't have money to pay your government, your military. And guess what this causes? Insurrection, war, and revolution in the very country that lost its reserves. Man, that's a cold scheme. That's a cold scheme. And most nations didn't see through it. Some of them are now starting to see through it. Alexandria, you always here. And I never gave you a wrench. Hold on one second. I never gave you a wrench. And I am so, let's see. I thought, oh, you do have a wrench. On this one, it doesn't show a wrench. Oh, you have a wrench. My bad, I'm sorry. But on this one, it doesn't show that you have a wrench. I wonder why is that? But anyway, so I'm telling I've had y'all time for a long time, and I'm sorry for keeping y'all. But this stuff, we have to talk about this stuff because no one else is. So I won't keep you any longer. Try to come around the Red Pill Diaries. Maybe I'll try to do a show around 6 or 7 tomorrow if I get a chance to. If they're not playing with the show like they've been playing with it today, we'll try to kick it off tomorrow, God willingly. If not, then we'll shoot for the next day. But we'll try tomorrow. What I will do, I won't put up a scheduled time yet. I'll wait till tomorrow to put up the scheduled time at the last minute so that they don't play with everything like they've been playing with it for the last day or so. So listen, I appreciate every moment with you all. I appreciate the talk that we have with each other. I appreciate the time that we spend because this could be our last time. So I value each moment, each time that we are able to talk with each other, to converse with each other, to build with each other, and try to find solutions to the problems that are ill in the world. On that note, I go out the same way. I always come in with love and peace in my heart for each and every one of you who love peace and truth. I love you, but always remember that the true and living God will always love you best. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous, and share the video, hit the like, tell others about the channel, and subscribe, and even become a channel member. I love each and every one of you. Stay strong. And as I go out, I got to say it. Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life could ever show you. I love you, Mama. And to my pops, R.I.P. I love you too. I'm out of here.